Hey everybody, it's good to be with you. Thank you so much for joining us for these online messages. We are loving the series that we just started last night for our Remix students. If you're a Remix student, you weren't able to attend last night, we hope that you'll join us for these online messages. These will be summaries of what we talk about here on Wednesday nights. If you are not a Remix student, thanks so much for joining us. And we would love for anyone who's watching to please comment. Let us know who's watching. Just comment your name. We would love to just know who's participating with us. And this new message series is called Free to Live. Free to Live. This is going to be a series that we do throughout the season, talking about God's grace, going really deep into God's grace. And I can't think of a better book than the book of Romans that talks about God's grace. And before we dive into that, we need to define what grace means. Grace is something that was given to you that you did not deserve. And so it's like a gift almost. And so as we dive deep into this, this is going to be a lot of what this is going to be what the Apostle Paul talks about God's grace, what it means to him, what he has come to know, and it's just amazing to him. And so as we walk through this, we hope that you'll discover more of God's grace in your life, and that you'll realize that grace is for you, which is the title of this message. Grace is for me. Grace is for you. Personalize that. And I don't know if you have any family memories that you have that are fun. Maybe it's with a parent, a sibling, or grandparents, whatever. But I like to look at this topic tonight that we're talking about, almost like remembering certain fun things that happened, and sometimes rather humorous things. And for me, I had broken something in my house and I had to pay $50. It was roughly $50 I had to pay for. I was in middle school, so I was broke. Maybe middle schoolers can identify with that. But, and so my dad offered me this challenge. We were a very competitive family already. And he said, hey, we were at a swimming area, and he said, if you do a flip off the high dive, I'll cover the $50. And I was like, let's do this. It's the easiest $50 because I had done plenty of flips before. I did it off that high dive before, but the thing that changed for me was having other people watch, right? I mean, it's just like added pressure. Your knees start to shake a little bit. And so I did it, and I was hoping not to make a fool of myself, but I did. And I rotated too far and just did basically what I would call a belly smacker, and it did not feel great. I was in a lot of pain the next day, very sore. I survived, but hey, $50 earned, right? And so for Paul, as we dive into this, he's got some memories of what it was like when God transformed his life, and he's going to talk about it here in Romans. This is like a gospel according to Paul. We have the gospel of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. These gospels talk about their observations of Jesus. They have different observations. Some are similar stories, but different observations. You can almost call Romans like the gospel according to Paul, his observation of God's grace, and he's going to personalize it. And so as we look at this, one of the things he brings out is our understanding of who the God the Father is. And he talks about this in Romans chapter 3, verse 24, which says this: all are justified freely by his grace, by God's grace, that came through the redemption of Jesus Christ. This is a wonderful picture that we're forgiven for those who are in Christ. And it's because of what Jesus did. But it's God's grace. God freely gave us this grace through Jesus Christ. And it's such an amazing thing. Remember, it's grace, something that was given to you that you did not deserve. This salvation, this connection that you can have with God the Father again. And Jesus talked a lot about this when he was on this earth, about his connection with God the Father, which really got him into some trouble with some people because they recognized that was him claiming to be God, that was claiming to be the Messiah, to be the Son of God, whatever, many different ways to describe Jesus. They knew that was what he was claiming to be, and it was a dangerous claim because they didn't like that, and they put him on a cross, but he resurrected. And now we get to experience this amazing grace that is found because of what God has done for us. And Paul's story is what really, his personal story really is how we can describe God's grace. And for him, he describes it here in Romans. Paul was known to be a man named Saul at one point in time. And when his name changed, it was significant. It was basically like a new creation, a new person. But at this time, before he came to know Christ, he was a man who persecuted Christians, who murdered them, and gave approval for that. He put people in prison. A number of different things that he did. But on one of his missions, he's going to a place to arrest more Christians. He was funded by Jewish leadership to do this because he thought this whole Jesus thing was just a cult that needed to be done away with. But in fact, he encounters Jesus on the road. And it says a bright light appeared, and the voice came to him, and it was a voice, he couldn't see their face because it was so bright. And Jesus begins to speak to him. And in that moment, his life is transformed. And he begins to see differently. You see, when you get to dive deep into God's grace, it's going to cause you to see things differently. It's going to cause you to see God differently. It's going to cause you to see Jesus differently. It's going to cause you to see life differently. This is what God's grace and how powerful it is. This is such an amazing concept. And as we look at this, Paul then becomes a messenger of this gospel that he was one point in time trying to stop. And as we look at this, I would encourage you to dive deep into God's grace and to really stay in tune with what we're talking about here when it comes to God's grace, and realize that the transforming power Paul is talking about is from the inside out. A lot of people want to change their behaviors before they come to God, or they try to experience this transformation power. But Paul is telling us the exact opposite. He says when you experience God's grace, when you come to him, he's going to change your behaviors after. At first, it may not feel like anything's changed, but when you discover more of his grace, man, it's going to start to transform your behaviors afterwards. And that's what's the beautiful thing. So if you're struggling with your identity, know that there's grace for you. If you're struggling with maybe some areas of habitual sin or things that you can't seem to overcome, there is grace for you, Paul says. There is grace for you if you have issues from your past. Maybe it's something you've done. Maybe it's something that people have done to you. There is grace for you. And, for Paul, this is what he is referring to, that this grace is for all of us. It's for you and for me. And I can't think of nothing better than to end this with the classic song, Amazing Grace, because that is really what this whole Romans is about. It's grabbing a hold of this amazing grace. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now I'm found. I was blind, but now I see. What an imagery of what the Apostle Paul experienced. And it's for you too. And I hope that this will encourage you and help you to grow in your faith and experience more of God's grace. Thank you so much for joining us, and have a wonderful day.